Do you actually know what wet food does to your cat's body when they eat it every single day? Most owners think it's just a tastier option, but what's really happening inside is something most people never realize. It changes how their organs work, how they feel, and even how they behave around you, and it all starts from day one. The very first thing that kicks in is proper hydration. Cats evolved as desert hunters whose ancestors got almost all their moisture from prey, which is why their thirst drive is naturally so low, and that's why your cat barely touches the water bowl. It's not pickiness, it's instinct. Dry kibble has only around 10% moisture, but wet foods is between 75% and 80%, which is almost exactly the moisture content of a mouse or a small bird. So when you start feeding wet food daily, your cat's hydration levels rise quickly. Their kidneys stop working overtime filtering concentrated waste. Their urine becomes more diluted, and the risk of crystals and urinary blockages, one of the most common and serious emergencies in cats, especially males, dropped significantly, and a study in the Journal of Feline Medicine and Surgery confirmed that cats on wet food produce more urine at a much lower concentration, which is exactly what a healthy urinary system needs. The second major change you'll notice is in your cat's weight. Most indoor cats struggle with weight not because they're lazy, but because dry kibble is loaded with carbohydrates, sometimes 40% or more, and cats as obligate carnivores have almost no biological ability to process carbs efficiently. So those carbs get stored as fat, but wet food is high in protein, high in moisture, and low in carbs, which lets your cat feel genuinely full on fewer calories, without you having to count every gram. And research from the Waltham Center for Pet Nutrition found that cats on wet food were more likely to stay lean even when allowed to eat freely, because protein sends a much stronger fullness signal to the brain than carbs ever do. Third, your cat's coat starts telling the truth. Dull fur, excessive shedding, and flaky skin aren't just cosmetic issues. They're signals of what's happening inside, and wet food being rich in animal-based proteins and fats, the two core building blocks of healthy skin and fur, gives the body what it needs, while dry kibble, even high-quality kinds, goes through such intense processing that many of those nutrients are broken down before they ever reach your cat system. So most owners start seeing a softer, shinier coat and reduced shedding within just a few weeks of switching, and research published in the Journal of Nutritional Science confirmed improved coat quality and skin health in cats on high-protein, moisture-rich diets. Fourth, and this one surprises most people, your cat's behavior around food completely transforms. If your cat screams when you walk near the kitchen, inhales her food in seconds, or wakes you up at 4 a.m. demanding more, it's not greed. It's that kibble's high-carb, low-moisture formula digests fast and leaves them feeling genuinely empty again within hours. But wet food changes that cycle because the higher protein triggers a real satiety response. The moisture adds physical volume to the meal that stretches the stomach just enough to activate the "I'm done" signal. And a study in the Journal of Veterinary Behavior confirmed that cats on high-protein diets showed less food-seeking behavior and less frustration between meals. Though in multi-cat homes or cats with stressful past, pairing wet food with a puzzle feeder helps even more by slowing them down and engaging their natural foraging instincts. Now, with all of that said, there is one risk that most owners never think about, and it can quietly backfire if you're not paying attention. Wet food is nothing like kibble when it comes to how you handle it after the can is open, because the moment wet food hits room temperature, bacteria start multiplying. And depending on how warm your home is, that window can be as short as 1 to 2 hours. So if your cat likes to eat a little and come back later, that second visit may no longer be safe, even if the food looks and smells fine to you, because bacterial growth doesn't announce itself. The safe rule is simple. Never leave wet food out for more than 2 hours. Throw out whatever's left after that. Refrigerate any unused portion from the can immediately and use it within 48 hours. And always bring refrigerated food closer to room temperature before serving. A few seconds in the microwave or a splash of warm water makes it more appealing, because cats are drawn to food that mimics the warmth of fresh prey. None of this is a reason to avoid wet food. Everything we covered here still holds. Better hydration, healthier weight, a shinier coat, common behavior around food, but the difference between wet food truly helping your cat and quietly causing problems comes down entirely to how you handle it after you open that can, and once you get that part right, you're giving your cat exactly what their body was built for: Now that you understand what wet food does to your cat's body from the inside out, let's go even deeper. Because most owners stop at just switching the food and never realize there are specific ways to maximize every single benefit we just talked about. And there are also some common mistakes that quietly cancel out all the good you're trying to do. The first thing most people get completely wrong when they switch to wet food is a transition. They go cold turkey, switching overnight from dry kibble to wet food, and then their cat refuses to eat it or develops an upset stomach, and they assume their cat simply doesn't like wet food, when in reality the cat's digestive system just wasn't ready for the change. Cats are creatures of habit more than almost any other animal. Their digestive enzymes, their gut bacteria, even the muscles in their jaw are all adapted to whatever they've been eating. So a sudden switch shocks the system, and the right way to do it is to go slow. Start by mixing just 10 to 20% wet food into their regular dry kibble for the first 3 to 5 days. Then gradually increase that ratio over 2 to 3 weeks until the bowl is entirely wet food. And during this period, you might notice softer stools or mild stomach gurgling, which is completely normal as the gut adjusts. But if you see vomiting, complete refusal to eat for more than 24 hours, or blood in the stool, that's when you slow down even further and check in with your vet. The second mistake owners make is choosing the wrong type of wet food and assuming all wet food is equal. It absolutely is not, and the label is where you need to spend your time. The first ingredient listed should always be a named animal protein. Chicken, turkey, salmon, beef, not meat byproducts or animal derivatives, which are vague terms that tell you nothing about actual nutritional quality. You also want to look at the carbohydrate content, which frustratingly isn't always listed directly on pet food labels the way it is on human food. But you can calculate it by adding up the percentages of protein, fat, moisture, fiber, and ash, and subtracting that total from 100. Whatever remains is approximately the carb content, and ideally you want that number to be under 10% for a cat, because remember, their bodies were never designed to process carbs as a primary fuel source. Grain-free doesn't automatically mean low-carb either. Many grain-free wet foods replace grains with potatoes or legumes, which spike carbs just as much. So always do the math rather than trusting marketing claims on the front of the package. Third, and this is something most owners never think about, is the importance of variety, not just for your cat enjoyment, but for their actual long-term health. Cats who eat the same protein source every single day for years can develop sensitivities or even outright allergies to that protein over time, and rotating between chicken, turkey, fish, beef, and rabbit keeps the immune system from fixating on any one ingredient. It also ensures your cat get a broader spectrum of amino acids, fatty acids, and micronutrients, because no single protein source is nutritionally complete on its own in a real-world diet. Rotating also prevents something called food fixation, where a cat becomes so accustomed to one specific texture and flavor that they flat-out refuse anything else, which becomes a serious problem if that food gets discontinued, goes out of stock, or if your cat develops a health condition that requires a different diet. Introducing variety early and consistently keeps your cat flexible, which is one of the kindest long-term things you can do for them. Fourth, let's talk about something that connects directly to everything you've already learned: the relationship between wet food and kidney disease, which is the number one cause of death in older cats. Chronic kidney disease affects an estimated 30 to 40% of cats over the age of 10. And while genetics do play a role, decades of research now strongly suggest that chronic low-level dehydration, exactly the kind that comes from a lifetime on dry kibble, is a major contributing factor. The kidneys are constantly filtering the blood, and when a cat is mildly but chronically dehydrated, the blood becomes more concentrated. The kidneys have to work harder to do their job, and over years and years, that extra workload causes cumulative damage that shows up as kidney disease in old age. Wet food won't guarantee your cat never develops kidney disease, but it gives those organs a dramatically better environment to function in across their entire life. And many vets who specialize in feline internal medicine now recommend wet food as a baseline preventive measure specifically for this reason. If your cat already has early-stage kidney disease, switching to wet food is often one of the very first things a vet will recommend. Not as a cure, but because proper hydration slows the progression and keeps your cat comfortable longer. Fifth, there's a question of dental health, because this is the argument most commonly used against wet food, and it deserves a real, honest answer. The idea that dry kibble cleans your cat's teeth is one of the most persistent myths in pet nutrition, and it's largely been debunked. Most cats don't chew kibble long enough or at the right angle for it to have any meaningful abrasive effect on their teeth. They crack it and swallow it whole, and the starchy residue it leaves behind actually feeds the bacteria in the mouth that cause plaque. Wet food doesn't clean teeth either, but it also doesn't leave the same starchy film. The honest truth is that neither food type is a substitute for actual dental care, and if you want to protect your cat's teeth, which matters enormously because dental disease causes pain that cats are experts at hiding, the most effective things you can do are regular toothbrushing with a cat-safe enzymatic toothpaste, annual dental checkups with your vet, and dental treats or water additives that are certified by the Veterinary Oral Health Council. Once you take dental care out of the equation, as a reason to choose kibble, the nutritional and hydration case for wet food becomes even clearer. 6. Let's talk about how wet food interacts with age, because the needs of a kitten, an adult cat, and a senior cat are genuinely different, and the way you use wet food should shift across those life stages. Kittens need extremely high levels of protein and fat to fuel rapid growth, brain development, and immune system maturation, and wet food is actually closer to what a mother cat's prey-based diet would naturally provide, making an excellent foundation during those first crucial months. Just make sure you're using a formula specifically labeled for kittens or all life stages, since adult formulas may not have sufficient caloric density. For healthy adult cats in their prime, wet food as a primary diet with perhaps a small amount of high-quality dry food as an occasional supplement.